It is 12:01 p.m. on January 16th, 2013, and we are calling this meeting of the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority Board in session. Ms. Rowe, any public comments?
No public comments.
So I'd just like to welcome everybody here today. Hope you had a tremendous holiday and looking forward to a great 2013. I know the city is as well with a number of changes, and we'll talk about a little bit kind of our meeting space going forward further on down the agenda. Item 3, adoption of the minutes for the CRRMA board meeting of December 12th, 2012. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes? Any changes, additions?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Minutes are approved. Item 3, discussion and action on board resolutions authorizing the executive director to execute the following instruments as they relate to the development of Loop 375 Americus Avenue Managed Lanes Project. A, project development agreement with the Texas Department of Transportation. B, agreement for professional engineering and environmental services with Brown & Gay Engineers, Inc. And C, work authorization number 16 with Atkins North America, Inc. as the CRRMA's general engineering consultant. As you know, we've been working on this project for a while. We requested a toll equity grant from TxDOT. We've completed a financial assistance agreement with TxDOT. We went out for a RFP, RFQ, and then RFP, and then RFQ, and this is all part of that process. So, Mr. Tejas?
Actually, you stole my thunder. Raymond Tejas with the Camino Real RMA. That's exactly right. We've gone through all the steps necessary. The remaining steps are the project development agreement, which actually grants us the authority from TxDOT to pursue this project and develop the preliminary engineering and environmental stage. The agreement with the actual engineering firm that will complete those services. And lastly, a work authorization with our general engineering consultant that will actually oversee those services. So you see those items A, B, and C. You've been provided under B and C the agreements that are ready for execution between the RMA and the engineering firm, as well as the RMA and its general engineering consultant. Unfortunately, what you don't have yet is the project development agreement with TxDOT. That project development agreement it's currently in negotiation with TxDOT. We provided them with a draft in December, and we haven't heard back just yet from TxDOT, but we anticipate hearing from them before too long on that one. In discussions with the chair, I'm recommending, and certainly we've done this in the past, but this is obviously within the purview of the board. I'm recommending that the board pass a motion that would authorize the executive director, myself, to complete negotiations of the agreement and actually sign the agreement. The reason that I'm proposing that is that this is a project development agreement which is similar in format to all of the other project development agreements that we have in place, which number at least maybe 6 or 7, somewhere in that range. This is a very standard agreement with TxDOT, and there shouldn't be anything in there that is unique. I've provided you with the draft that we've provided to TxDOT, and I don't anticipate a great deal of revisions to that, other than perhaps some additional scope items and that sort of thing. And lastly, in terms of timing, we cannot issue a notice to proceed to the engineers or the work authorization to our general engineering consultant without having the project development agreement signed. What needs to happen at this point is TxDOT and our attorneys have to agree to the form of the agreement. At that point, then, it would normally come back to us, and we would wait for either your next board meeting or the board meeting after that. I'm assuming next board meeting, which would be in February, for approval and execution. I would sign it and then send it off to TxDOT, and then that adds more time. So what I'm proposing is this motion that would allow me to execute the agreement and come right back at the very next meeting and present you with the final document. If there's anything that's being proposed from TxDOT that is unique, I would bring that back and not sign it. Anyhow, so again, the point, to kind of focus in these comments, the point is to save time and to allow us, once we negotiate the project development agreement with TxDOT, to immediately turn around and issue the notice to proceed to begin the work, the actual work.
And this discussion came about with Vice Chair Dami and I with Raymond. We actually requested that he formulate this motion. Raymond and the board has prepared several other comprehensive development agreements. They're fairly standard. As Raymond mentioned, he gave you a copy. It's only 4 pages. A number of it is just kind of basic legalese. basically stating that, we comply to certain standards. We ASHTO work with TxDOT. It's signed by, will be signed by Raymond and signed by the executive director. And the motion that I have in front of me basically directs Raymond to come back and notify us once it's completed if there were any changes to that effect. Is there any questions?
Who do we hold accountable, Mr. Calvo, for all this mess?
Always. Yes, sir.
Good, good.
It's probably been sitting on Mr. Calvo's desk. Is that correct, Mr. Calvo?
Sort of, okay. As long as we can tell the press who's responsible, I'm fine.
So with regards to 4A, I'm asking for a motion to authorize the executive director to negotiate and execute a project development agreement with TxDOT for the development of preliminary engineering and environmental phase of the America's Managed Lanes project, and that the executive director shall provide an update on the agreement at the board meeting immediately following its execution.
You need a motion? You want a second to that motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Calvo wants the floor.
Oh, Mr. Calvo, I'm sorry.
Good morning. Eduardo Calvo with TxDOT here in El Paso. The agreement, yes, it is in our court. We've looked at it, and we agree with Raymond's comments, Mr. Tejas' comments, that there's not a lot of complications to specifically to this agreement, because we're talking about preliminary engineering work. So it's just a matter of putting it in the correct language and just adding a few details on the scope. And like you said, there's no secret. It's just that the work needs to comply with the latest specifications from ASHTO. The document needs to follow the NEPA process, the National Environmental Policy Act, and so on. So just wanted to mention to give you a little bit more comfort that we don't see any issues with the agreement.
It also spells out it's specifically not for construction. It's just for the environmental and the preliminary engineering.
Exactly.
Any timeline on when we can bring this before the board?
I don't expect this to take more than maybe a week or so. It all depends. Once attorneys get a hold of it, but, engineers, we're really fast.
So, all the more reason if this is done fairly quickly.
Yeah.
With this motion, we put out and it's been seconded. We've given Raymond the ability to sign that, bring it forward to the board, and go forward. With that, Raymond, on item 4B, agreement for professional engineering and environmental services with Brown and Gay Engineers, Inc.
So this item, it's obviously all three items are related. This is the result of the procurement that concluded at the last meeting. At the last board meeting, this board authorized me to negotiate an agreement with Brown and Gay Engineers and to come back with the agreement. This agreement had been drafted by our attorneys, and I believe there were very few revisions to this particular agreement. So, subject to your questions, I recommend approval.
Is there any questions?
So move.
There's a motion to approve 4B. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? 4B is approved. 4C, work authorization number 16 with Atkins North America, Inc. as the CRRMA's general engineering consultant. Again, all tied together, providing oversight basically on the performance of 4B. Is that correct, Mr. Tejas?
That's correct. So our engineers will oversee the actual production of the preliminary engineering and environmental services. That's correct.
Basically, it's spelled out, the backups in the copy. It has a not to exceed amount that I believe is broken down into a couple different areas. Is there any questions?
So move.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion 4C is approved. Item 5, presentation and update on the airway interchange portion of the I-10 corridor aesthetic improvement project. And we're fortunate that we have Ms. Scurry here today to kind of update us. She's been busy at first the MPO and then City Council, and from what I've seen, it looks like the project, both at those entities and the communities being embraced, is really kind of an opportunity to enhance the overall transit corridor in this area. Mr. Tejas, is there any comments that you have before I ask Ms. Scurry to come up and begin the presentation?
Actually, I would just mention, for the benefit of our newer board members, that this goes back to the 2008 Comprehensive Mobility Plan. That Comprehensive Mobility Plan included a project that would look at the I-10 corridor, and so what we did in a collective effort between TxDOT, the City of El Paso, and the RMA, we all agreed that we would spend $10 million on the aesthetic improvements to the I-10 corridor. The way that we agreed to do that was that the city would provide an artist through its Museums and Cultural Affairs division. The RMA would do general oversight of the entire project, and also we would provide our general engineering consultants to do the actual design and landscape work. and TxDOT would provide the funding for it. And of course, since it's on their facilities, they have ultimate oversight as well. So those are the three partners that are involved. We broke this project initially up into two phases. The first phase was to develop a conceptual design plan, which was done, I believe, last year, and we presented that to you all at that time. And that really looked at the entire corridor, looked at what's out there on the ground today and where we're looking to go. That phase is complete. The second phase then was focus on individual interchanges and specifically the airway interchange. So with that, I think we're ready for Ms. Scurry to...
One of the highlights, too, that I'd like to talk about, and Vicki, perhaps you could talk about this. One of the components of this agreement was that Ms. Scurry bring on a local artist, and she's been working with a local artist, and his art is part of this project. And I believe there's some other opportunities potential with this local artist with some additional infrastructure projects down the road based on some of the training and work and tutelage he's got from Ms. Scurry. So, Ricardo, do you have a question?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. I wanted to find out if we took the opportunity to invite either the college or high school artists or let them know about this.
We did. At your request, I reached out to both El Paso Independent and I've forgotten now, but I can find those emails if you're interested. We reached out to the high school art students as well.
What was the response?
Unfortunately, none.
Well, we can try.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for your effort.
Of course.
Vicki, Happy New Year. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. It's great to be back, and thank you for having me here. And we did have an extensive outreach also for our public meeting. We actually put postcards around the neighborhood, and my intern, Mike Rivera, walked them around and invited people. So we kind of really wanted people to participate if they so elected to. So, I mean, we agree it's best if they can come to meetings and hear us and give us feedback. So with that stated, I'm going to say that the public meeting that we did have was very, very positive. It was right before Thanksgiving. We had probably about, 25, 50 people total, and overwhelmingly positive remarks. And what we've done since then is we've incorporated some of the comments from the public, and we've put them into this presentation. And I'll just kind of go through it, and I'll tell you where they intersected with us. It was primarily on color as an idea. And another response that came from the public meeting was that they really wanted to see this project extend all the way to the airport. And that actually also is the component that gives us more outreach for a local artist and for Mike to perhaps work in additional medians. There's about 8 more that connect airway back to the airport. And so with that stated, I'm just going to launch into this and give you an overview of where we are and how we got there. And this basically is adapting the guidelines from the master plan to a site. So in this summary, I'm probably going to go through this more at the end, but our overriding idea is that we wanted to capture the spirit of flight because it reflects the airport, and we're trying to create a gateway to the city and also to the airport. So a lot of our forms and our inspiration comes from this idea of moving from earth to sky. And it's reflected in a series of arcs and a series of fins that rotate. And you'll see these ideas reflected in different components throughout the site, in the planters, in the paving, in the column wraps, etc. So with that stated, I'll move to an overview. And here's the first look at the overview of the plan of airway. We think it's very important that the experience extends from gore to gore, and that the experience is one that you recognize and feel if you're on the frontage road or on I-10 or even in the air. So we've considered these different viewing experiences in designing this. The large arc that's in the center that goes over the bridge is like a wingspan. It's a big blue wingspan. And then it transitions to other colors in these landscape fins that extend further into the gore. And there, the fins transition from the blue of the sky to the sunrise and sunset colors of the sky and blend in with the landscape. You can also see these large arcing planters in this overview. And because the slope paving is primarily concrete and with perhaps mixed with concrete beneath it, we decided it was best if we came up from the slope paving to add our planters. And this gave us an opportunity to scale the site and then to plant it and soften it. And that was, again, something that came out of the master plan, the idea of softening these hard concrete sites with landscape, with native plants, and using different scaling devices to make it friendly for pedestrians. So if you look here at the bridge fins open and closed image, what you'll see here is this is the large arc that's created of these fin forms that are sort of I would say they're wing-like feather forms or avionic type forms, and they rotate through a series of angles, 1 degree at a time, to go from vertical to basically lying down and create this big, graceful arc that adds, I think, an element of grace to otherwise boxy infrastructure. I'll go to the next. If you're on the bridge itself, you would see these arcs as low, low rises, and you can see right through them depending on your direction of travel. So if you're going towards the east and you're looking out, you would see right through to the landscape or to the cityscape. If you're actually on the ground, it looks a bit like this. So you can see this whole form of this wing arc. And basically, your direction of travel determines what you see and how you see it. If you're traveling on the frontage road, you see it as a solid form. And if you're standing right in front of it, it looks just about like this. So what I like about this is this will be here every day. People will see it and experience it going and coming, is that it will change with your viewer's position, but it will always be interesting, and it'll also always change with the light and shadow of the day and at night. Here's a look at the landscape fins. What we wanted to do here is right now there isn't much that you see on Airway, actually on I-10 when you're driving by Airway, or much that you see on the gateway frontage roads either. So we wanted to create something that sequences all along there. So the landscape fins basically introduce you to this idea of motion, and they carry the same arcs as the bridge fins. And they lead you to the landscape planters, which are big, graceful, arcing forms that are basically filled with native plants and grasses. So if you're on the frontage road, you have a certain experience. If you're on the highway, you have another experience. But in both cases, you acknowledge that you've seen a place that's marked. And right now, Airway isn't marked out there. It's just like any other interchange. So this will be a significant change, that suddenly you have a place that you realize you're coming into it. There's more to experience. It'll take place over probably over a minute or two, this whole drive. And then you're, past it. But you'll see both the fins and the landscape and then the blue arc of the bridge. And all of this will add to a sense of destination and place. Here's another look at the landscape fins in a bird's eye with the planters. And here's a slide that shows this inspiration. Again, it's flight, it's airfoils, it's birds, and it's a very simple form. It's a very, I would say, elegant idea in that it uses a very few number of elements, all speaking the same language, to create a complete thought. And here, again, inspiration from the sky. These are the colors. This came directly out of the community meeting. Some people really liked the sunset and sunrise colors, and so we decided we'd incorporate them into the landscape fins. They also really liked the blue, so it was like kind of an even split between the people who attended who said something about color, which way we should go. And so we thought our best solution would be to combine both because they worked really well together. And they actually, I think our solution is better than our initial one that we came forward with. So we do listen. And then here's a look at the landscape planters. And again, I like these because they not only allow us to plant these areas, but they create a secondary sense of scale, and they create a secondary sense of form. So as you're driving along, it's no longer just a big flat of slope paving. What you see instead are these arcing forms with plants. And again, it softens the site. It makes it much more compatible with the hotel landscape across the street. Because one of the things that's happening in this area is there's so much renovation with hotels and I think eventually restaurants, and people want to walk. And people like to be near landscape instead of just a hard concrete surface. This introduces all of that. And it does it in very succinct ways. This is the landscape median, and this is where my intern, Mike Rivera, will be working. He has this form that's in the median. It's a big sort of wing form on its side. It's approximately 8 feet tall and 24 feet long, and there's two of them. They create a kind of embrace for the planter, and it will be illuminated, and he's working on stencil designs right now for it. And one of the things that I stressed with Mike is that it's not just making a product that's important to me, that he makes a piece of public art, but that he also learns something about what it takes to be a public artist, and that he learns software so that he can learn to communicate with our team and with other teams in the future and with the public. So we've asked him to learn both Illustrator and SketchUp as two programs that are fundamental to creating this type of work. And he is doing that. He's just recently bought a new computer with his, internship, and he's got a digitizing pad, and he's about to embrace learning software. And then we're going to ask him for deliverables in those programs and put him on a bit of a schedule so that he can't just slip out. Because he could just draw it, but one of the deficits of that is he'll never really understand how to work in scale. Because I think it's hard for him right now to realize this isn't, when it's on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, it's not really 8.5 by 11, it's 8 feet by 24, you know? So we're trying to teach him a whole other set of skills, as well as allow him to do a piece of work and in the community that represents them. And he'll actually be presenting at the public meeting tonight his ideas. So we're going to give him that type of experience too. And I would say one other thing is I had 2 interns on my last project on the master plan, and one of them, Brenda, actually really raised her sights, and she's now in an MFA program in New York City, and she's getting a degree so that she can become a professional artist and perhaps teach or do something more than what she'd expected. Originally, she was in a secondary teaching program. She'd completed it, and she was about ready to start teaching when she became my intern. And I think we really sort of helped her to see the possibilities for her, and I think it was very successful. And we're hopeful to do the same thing with Mike. So. And then here we are at the sort of pedestrian scale, which this is always my favorite scale, actually, of a highway project, is sort of being the advocate for pedestrian. And what we've done here is we've added column wraps that add color to the underside of the bridge. They scale it, they add motifs, and they tie in with the rest of it. You can see that sort of arcing form. It's repeated in the column wraps, although they're sort of oval forms. But if you see them from the side, it's again a repetition of what we've already stated. And the same on the abutment walls. You'll see there's aggregate there, but it's placed in a sort of arc-type configuration with 2 different colors of a red and a gold aggregate. Once we put those simple lines on the abutment walls, we pulled them into the project. Before then, they just sat out. So what we're doing is we're facing all the slope paving that's remaining. We're not taking all of it out. We're only taking it out where we have planters for the most part. And we're facing it with the aggregate that's so typical, like you'd find on Copia or Pedra, that works well. This is a look, again, under the bridge. We're interested in having sort of multiplicity of views even here. So the back side of the column, the side of the column, the front, all look a little different. So again, it's this experience of moving through space and moving around. And the theme, again, is movement. There's a lot of movement in these column wraps, and you can see through to the columns below, beneath, rather. So, I mean, they're fine for inspections and things like that. They're just going to be bolted on. And then finally, lighting the bridge at night. We've been working on that this weekend, and our intention is to have a LED end-to-end fixture that will be part of the truss structure that will illuminate those fins. And it will probably just be a single color, but we might, I think we're also looking at changing color, actually, from a blue, in the blue zones, being able to pick the best blue. Blue would have the most impact, I think, on the site out there because it would work well with the ambient light that's coming from the street lights, and it's not a highway color. It also reinforces what we have. So we would be lighting the columns with white light, the fins with probably a blue light, and I'll show some more. We have more pictures that show this. We would have a blue line of LEDs along the center line of the walkway on the path side that we want you to walk on. We're very much designating which side you should be on and which side you shouldn't be on. We don't want you on the U-turn side. We want the passengers, or the rather pedestrians, you know, walking on the interior of those columns. And so we're going to, with paving patterns, et cetera, we're reinforcing wayfinding. And the blue line is part of that. And then at night, you can see we have dots of blue lights, LED lights, that are on the planters that, again, pick up your approach. We've been talking this weekend, or this week, about actually lighting the trees, uplighting the trees as another part of this to make the approach more desirable and I think, again, it's pronounced. And then you would arrive at the bridge with this arc of color. If you're coming from the airport to Airway, you would see the median that's illuminated and the bridge behind it. So that would be another way of looking at this. And then these are some of Mike's early sketches, and I think they're a really good start. I just think he is going to be investing himself between now and April and coming up with more like final type designs that really are stencil patterns and really are in scale. But this is where he's starting. So I think this is a good start. It's just he needs to, you know, invest at this point. And we're here to help him do that. And then finally, this is our overview, and where we are now is really taking this from a SketchUp model to reality. And so I'm here with my team, which is a great team. I'm here with Jacobs and AIA, and we've been talking about how we actually detail this stuff and, how the members all connect together, et cetera. And it seems to be going very well, and I'm pleased to say that I'm very hopeful that this is going to be a great project for you.
Any questions for Ms. Curry?
Very different.
Beautiful. Ricardo?
Thank you, Vicky, and I like it. I would have loved it if the color had been cowboy blue, but
Send me an email and show me cowboy blue.
I do have some comments. The lighting, I'm assuming that'll be solar lighting, take advantage of our environment.
I wanted to do solar, but I don't know if the technology is there to do it yet. You can ask. We have a lighting guy here today. Do you want to take that question? Because my initial thought was that we should do solar if we could. We're doing LEDs and conventional, but here he is.
And the thinking is, can the solar provide the power for the LEDs?
Well, the problem is that the solar array that you'd have to put up would be bigger than her fins that she has in order to collect enough energy to power all that.
All right.
So, and the fixtures themselves, because even though they're LED and they're only 24 watts per linear foot, still the panel to put up would just take away from the art that you're creating. LED really has to be in a field or someplace that you don't mind having a field of arrays collecting energy, because they aren't. There's no way to make them pretty.
Right.
We looked at doing it. Just an example. We looked at doing it Widow Rogers Park that they just created in Dallas. When we were developing that, we tried to develop 2 screens of LEDs at the entrance of that tunnel that we created, and to build enough square footage just to power the daylight lighting that we had was more than what we could install in that place. So it's just the technology isn't there yet.
Thank you. And then the last question is that under the overpass, the roof under the overpass, are we doing something with that, or we're leaving it gray and stuff?
Well, I hope we're cleaning it and I hope we're painting it, but let's ask Chad. The answer is yes.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
On some of the early designs I looked at, there was going to be a design in the fins. Are you still looking at putting a design in the fins themselves individually?
We're still looking at that, but we did some variations on it and we never liked them, and so we took them out. And one of my concerns is we don't want to see the truss behind it very much, as little as possible. And so the more we open the fins, the more you see the truss. So we decided that we like them solid better, but we could still explore that. We're still exploring aesthetics, in that level, pattern surfacing. But my impression so far from having drawn 3 or 4 things is none of them looked good. And we also have stiffeners back there and other things that complicate it. So as I learn more about the fins, I'm going to say probably not. It'll just complicate the overall fin design, which is a challenge to make it thin and structural. And that's what we're doing today, actually, is determining how they really are, because they have a secondary fin on the back, which is a stiffener, and they have 2 other pieces of metal that, basically strap them that allow them to be fixed to the bridge. So, it's more complicated than it looks, but our intention is to make them look very clean and simple.
It looks nice. And, it's interesting when you look at the total project, kind of the bridge reinforcement, the lighting are fairly significant cost components as well as the fins. So there's a substantial upgrade to that particular interchange, and the lighting, as I heard everyone see when it first came up, is going to be dramatic compared to what's there, compared to what we're putting in and what will be there. It's going to make quite the difference. And as those people, stay in the hotels over on the south side and commute over to Starbucks for their coffee in the morning and don't necessarily want to get in their car to do that, there's going to be an avenue to create more of a walkability, more of a walkable type area, and that's one of the benefits of this particular design and the enhancements to the structure and the lighting itself. So.
Yeah, and we'll be getting more into the crosswalks and all the circulation stuff in this phase. So that's really where we're headed, is to make it as safe and accessible and friendly, for drivers and pedestrians.
Yeah.
And
Vicki, I'm glad one of the things we wanted to come out of this was not only to involve local talent, which you've done, but also to develop a skills transfer to make sure that our local artists would benefit from your experience and wealth of knowledge that you provide, and I'm glad you're doing that.
My pleasure.
When all is said and done, this gentleman's going to be a lot better off when, at the end and when he first started. So, and that's, a lot of credit goes to you, so I'm glad you're doing that.
Thank you. And I'll tell him your thoughts to make sure he does his tutorials.
Please.
What's the timeframe to have this, to start the project?
Well, it's already started, and we've all been started now for a while. I started in the fall, I think, or late summer on this part, and we've been, pardon?
The actual construction?
The actual construction, actually, again, I think I should put Chad on.
Chad, if you could provide your name for the record,
Chad
also
St.
your
John.
colleague as well, your colleague back there that shared some comments with us.
That was Randy Walker. He's our electrical engineer with Jacobs, and my name is Chad St. John with Jacobs Engineering as well. The schedule right now is we're submitting plans. We've submitted the first set of plans to TxDOT for the 30% review. We are supposed to be done with 100% construction documents by the end of May so that it can go through the TxDOT review, and letting is scheduled right now for August. And it is a plus or minus about a year construction period.
And do we have a plan to roll it out, or when we start letting the public know? I know we've had some public meetings, but I mean, this is a huge change for that intersection.
We've not developed that, but we're aware. We've spoken with the representative on a number of occasions. We know that she wants to be heavily involved, and we'll keep her apprised, and we'll have some sort of an outreach program that we'll develop.
Vicki, I heard a comment or statement that is there reason to believe there will be some median improvements on airways back to the airport or not?
Well, that came out of the public meeting, and so we're putting it on the table as something to consider, because it did come out. And so I think when we were talking the other day at, again, another meeting, one of our, I think it was perhaps city council or the other, but there is a desire to continue to involve local artists in these types of projects. And this median project back to the airport just seems like a natural for that, because you could conceptually have different artists doing different medians all the way from airway to the airport. And we've already started it with Mike. He could even supervise it or something like that. I mean, our hope is to train him to be able to do something like that. So it's something we're talking about. We mentioned it. It came out of the comments of our November meeting. And I think it would be great if there is a lot of, I think, money that isn't attached right now to specific sites. So if this could be considered as another public art site in the city, it would be a great thing.
Who will be taking the lead? And is it the city will be taking the lead?
Well, kind of along those, if I could interject,
Yeah.
along those lines, the funds that are available for this project are limited to use along I-10. So we couldn't use any of those funds for airway, for actual airway between I-10 and the airport. However, at yesterday's council meeting, Representative Ortega proposed and the council adopted a motion that would focus on medians. And so I know that they're looking at that as well. So we're working, obviously, one of our partners is the City of El Paso, and we've been working with the Museums and Cultural Affairs Division. So they're well aware of it, and we've shared with them our ideas, and they're, like I say, heavily involved. So it would be, they're city medians, so it would be the city.
Okay. I know when I was with the MPO, we spent some money, federal monies, to improve some of the medians in here. So I don't know if those monies are available or redirected, or so long as somebody picks it up, and it seems like somebody from the city is thinking about picking it up at some point.
Yes, sir. And we'll look at the MPO as well. We've got Terry Casado that can look into that and see if there's any funds that we could identify.
Thank you, Ray.
Yes, sir.
Vicki, thank you very much. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I have a comment too. I mean, this project was also enhanced with money from Keep El Paso Beautiful for additional landscaping. And I'm looking at this picture. I don't know if the landscaping is what we're seeing in this schematic, or if it's landscaping actually on airways. I don't know if, Raymond, you can.
Well, the interchange
clarify
includes enhancements at the airway interchange, actually on airway, Vicki?
Yeah, the median that we have is on airway, actually. Or, yeah, it's on airway.
So where did the landscaping funds from Keep El Paso Beautiful where are those funds actually being spent?
Well, they get rolled into the total project budget, but those funds have to be used on the landscape and the medians.
The other thing I'll add about landscaping is we're just starting to get into it, and until we get core samples, which we'll have maybe next week, we don't really know what's inside the slope paving. We've been told it was concrete, but it may not be concrete and dirt. It may be that it's just construction soil there, in which case we'll probably pull out more soil and plant more in the median, in the slope paving areas themselves, in addition to the planters. We'd have shallow roots where those things are because of the straps and other things that are there. But there's a possibility of having more planting than what we're currently showing, because right now we considered that it was concrete inside the MSE panel structure. So you'll see more. But I think in terms of the opportunity that is on Airway, we've captured it. We looked into adding a second median on the other side of the infrastructure, but it turns out it's private property. It's not a city street, because we wanted to put a median over there as well and increase the pedestrian access. But it's owned, I think, by the hotels and the gas stations or something. It's privately owned. So.
As far as your design, I mean, it's just a very thoughtful and creative design. I think it's going to be really impactful and beautiful. But I'm just wondering, in terms of the Keep El Paso Beautiful grant, which is one of the reasons why Airways was selected, what else is going to be landscaped other than this median that we're looking at?
Well, their funding was only $265,000. So their funding goes towards not only the roadway itself, but also Airway. So when you're looking at it, it's really just I guess it's really just an addition to the project budget to allow for the landscape. I'm not sure that I'm answering your question, but ultimately the real answer is that Keep El Paso Beautiful funds will go to the Airway interchange, period. I hope that's helpful.
And our intention is to plant as much as we can, that will grow, seriously.
Missouri, are you comfortable?
Thank you.
Vicki, thank you very much. Item 6, presentation on the general engineering consultants' recently completed work for the 4th, 5th, and 6th direct connectors for the Americas Interchange project. That was on the agenda today. Mike Rudd, the designer of the 4th, 5th, and 6th, also the designer for the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, had a family emergency, and he's not going to be available. So I believe we're striking this item from the agenda, and we'll push it to our February meeting. Is that correct, Ms. Tejas?
I'll do that.
Item 7, discussion and action on the Executive Director's Report A, the Americas Interchange Ribbon Cutting Ceremony, December 8th, 2012. Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority dates, meeting dates and times for 2013, and update on the fiscal year 2012 audit. In regards to the ribbon cutting ceremony, Ralph, Raymond, and I were there, along with our former chair, Harold Hahn, one of our former board members, Tanny Berg, also attended by the county judge, Representative Pickett, Chairman Houghton was there, a representative from FHWA, representative from Congressman Reyes' office. It was really a terrific day. I mean, really something to see a project that the RMA has quarterbacked really from the get-go in regards to the financing, the design, the procurement, the construction, and to see it come to completion under budget, ahead of schedule, really was something. So I just really enjoyed it. It was well attended. I know those, when they opened those 3 direct connectors, it really provided a huge boost to that area, and we immediately, within the next day after the first direct connector, saw the other 2 come online. And I haven't seen any traffic counts, but just from what I've seen from the media, they appear to be very well used at this point. So as we discussed a little bit earlier, the design for 4, 5, and 6 has been completed. Those have been let in October. It's my understanding that that construction will start sometime first quarter of 2013, and it's probably about a 14 to 18-month project from what I'm hearing from our GEC. So look for some additional construction, and then to finish up on items on the final direct connectors 7 and 8, as well as the braided ramp, are still kind of in process with us. Raymond, did I miss anything in that regard?
No, sir. I think you covered it all.
It was a good day. Item B, Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority dates and times for 2013. As you know, we're not quite sure what our schedule is here. We don't know if we're going to have an interim or we're going to move to library for 1 or 2 months prior then to moving towards the time building. So stay updated. Potentially we could be at the public library as soon as next month, or potentially just the March meeting, and then from there at the new board meeting at the Times building. But we are still proposing to meet on the second Wednesday of the month at 9 a.m. Does that work for everybody? So, yes? I think that's a good time. We can get in, get our business done, get to work, and then go about doing what we do to make our living. So, And then finally, item C, update on the fiscal year 2012 audit. Our audit, the auditors are in. I met them a little bit earlier from Gunderson out of Albuquerque. Mr. Tejas, do you want to elaborate on that?
Really just a note to mention that it's ongoing and should be wrapping up before too long, and I hope to have this item to you at the next meeting.
Any questions? We'll keep you posted on our kind of meeting places. We have the time pretty much locked down. We know what they are. With that, is there a motion to adjourn? Is there a second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? We are adjourned at 12:41 p.m. on January 16th, 2013. Thank you.